first bracha was that we know the difference between good and bad, right? The second bracha was Shalosani Goy, which means that we're happy to be Jewish. The third bracha was Shalosani Oved, that we are free in order to serve Hashem. The fourth bracha is Shalosani Isha, that we have mitzvahs, right? So that we're able to perform the mitzvahs. And then the next bracha is Pokeach Ivrim, that God gives sight to the blind. So the simple understanding over here is that we wake up in the morning. When you're asleep, you don't see. When you open your eyes in the morning, you do see. If you're in here in the dormitory, you open your eyes in the morning and you see your roommate, and then you promptly close your eyes again because that's quite an awful sight. But that's just the simple understanding. The deeper understanding, of course, is Pokeach Ivrim. We're working upwards over here towards trying to reach spiritual levels. So now that we know that we've got mitzvot, Pokeach Ivrim, we need to open our eyes to the mitzvot that are there, right? To know what it is that we're supposed to do. It's not enough just to know it, but we've got to see them as well. There's an interesting machlokes in the halacha as to whether somebody who cannot see recites this bracha of Pokeach Ivrim, right? If somebody is blind, whether they should say this or whether they shouldn't.
If someone's blind, is that even though he's blind, he's able to use his other senses?
Yeah, possibly. Over here, Pokeach Ivrim, I don't know how well that fits in with the words themselves. But what's for sure is what for sure is what is fascinating in general is that people who are blind normally, first of all, they normally have the most incredible sense of hearing, and because their other senses sort of move in to take over.
If they're deaf also.
If they're deaf as well, then they have an incredible sense of touch. It's just that the body somehow or other the body manages to try to compensate for something which is lacking. So if a person can't see, he'll have very acute hearing. If a person can't hear, maybe he'll have very good sight. It's just that the body tries to make up for what it doesn't have.
What does Pokeach Ivrim literally mean?
Or opens the eyes of the blind.
Oh, what is
Pokeach?
How can you say that with only two words?
Pokeach means to open.
Yeah.
And Ivrim means the blind.
Oh.
Pokeach?
To open. Okay.
Isn't it Poteach?
Poteach and Pokeach. It's got the same, has the same meaning. Which in modern Hebrew you wouldn't say Pokeach. I mean, if you did, people would stare at you and think, these crazy Americans. Which the truth is they'll probably do anyway, actually. So you may as well say Pokeach. But Pokeach Ivrim means to open the blind. Right now, again, what are you opening from the blind? What are you opening? So the inference is the eyes of the blind, right? Okay. The words enayim are not there because it's understood that when you're opening something from someone who's blind, then you're talking about his sight. The next bracha coming along is Malbish Arumim, which is who clothes the naked. Now, obviously, there's a certain chesed over here that God, clothes us. We get dressed in the morning. We don't walk around without any clothes on. That's
Well, we try to.
Some areas of the world.
Just not here, not in here. This is in here, in this shir room. It's definitely a chesed that HaKadosh Baruch Hu got us dressed. That's for sure. Right?
Yeah.
Right? So first of all, there's the chesed that HaKadosh Baruch Hu allows us to get dressed, so we're not walking around without any clothes on. But the deeper dimension over here is Pokeach Ivrim. We open our eyes to the mitzvahs. Malbish Arumim. Now we have to clothe ourselves in the mitzvahs. Right, which means that again, it's not enough. Judaism is an interactive religion, which means it's not enough to know about it. It's not enough to have righteous people that are doing all the spiritual stuff, and we can just carry on doing whatever we want to do. But we've got to be involved as well, which means that we have to clothe ourselves in the mitzvahs that God has given us.
Is it also referring to the correct clothing?
I've never seen a source which says that it's referring to clothing. I don't know. It's an interesting idea. I don't see why not, and I don't see why yes.
Also, it could be.
So does that mean that it includes booty shorts? I think is what he's saying.
But this is what's
Boogie
weird.
shorts.
Yeah.
Why do we say it after?
Stay away from that.
Why do we put it on after saying to finish, after waking up, after doing everything else? Why are we saying this now? Why don't we say it when we wake up?
Good question. Because going back to the 15 steps, right? Which means this is the beginning of our avodah in the temple.
Okay, but that doesn't make sense because the first thing you do is you open your eyes even before you're able to distinguish between a man and a woman and all of that. Look. So why don't we say all of this before that?
In Mitzvah Hashem, you'll see as we get further along, there are going to be brachas that don't have any connection whatsoever to what you've just done, right? And we need them in Mitzvah Hashem. When we get to the end, you'll see, but we need them in a flow. They've got to flow one after the other.
This is what I'm saying. And then if we're putting one after we put on tefillin, could it be something to do with tefillin? You close it.
No, we'll get to tefillin later on. It's another bracha over here. We'll get there. Mitzvah Hashem.
That bracha party today.
Mitzvah Hashem. Why not? Yeah.
So, speaking of clothing, what's the right way to dress? For a guy, at least. I mean,
For you?
No, for...
I think a pretty frilly pink blouse and maybe like a.
Making fun, I have actually those colors.
What's the way to get dressed? I mean, obviously, the most obvious way to get dressed is according to the correct order, right? So underclothing first and then overclothing second.
But,
The halacha says like this: when you put your clothing on, you should put first of all. For example, you put on a shirt, right? You should put your right hand in first, and then your left hand, unless you're left-handed. Anybody here left-handed?
I'm ambidextrous.
You're ambidextrous, so you will just be paralysed with indecision each morning, which is why you have to sleep with your shirt on. I think just put it on the once and never take it off ever again. You're left-handed, so you're also left-handed. You should be ashamed of yourself.
But we kill fat kings.
I did play baseball, right? Well,
What were you trying to say?
Baseball.
I'm trying to lose weight. I really am.
With your left or your right?
Don't worry, you're not a Moabite.
Oh, that's the nicest thing you've ever said about me. You know that? Thank you. When you get dressed, you should put your right hand in first, and you put your left hand in second, right? It says interesting in the halacha. It says that you shouldn't put on two pieces of clothing at the same time. So sometimes when you get undressed at night and you take your jumper off, your sweater, whatever you call it, and you've got your shirt on underneath, it all kind of comes off all in one go, right? So you shouldn't put them on again separate them and put them on one by one.
Does that include the separate socks?
Well, I mean, I would certainly recommend putting one sock on each foot for sure.
No, but what I mean by can you put the sock on both feet at the same time?
How do you do that?
I'm not sure, but
you took the words out of my mouth.
Dominant sock on, then you're non-dominant.
You took the words out of my mouth. I'm like thinking to myself, how on earth are you going to know? You need to put your right sock on first, left sock on first. Here, look, it's a very famous. Everybody knows this, right? You put your right foot in, your left foot out, right?
Good joke.
No, your right foot in and then your left foot in.
Well, I really don't know how the song goes. I just know that when he died, when they tried to bury him, it was a problem because they tried to put his right foot in and his left foot in and his right foot out. Right. Well, so what happens? You put on when you. Hold on a second. When you put on your shoes, right? You should put your right shoe on first and then your left shoe on, and then you should tie your left shoelace first and your right shoelace afterwards. Except for you degenerate. You should put your left shoe on first and your right shoe on second, and then tie your right shoe first and your left shoe second, because that's to do with putting on tefillin. When you put on your tefillin, you put your tefillin on your weaker arm, which for me is every morning I'm completely undecided because they're both pretty weak. But I'm like, whichever one can manage to lift the tefillin up, that's the one that puts them on the other hand. That's the way it works by me. Thank you. And that's to do with the idea of putting on tefillin. You put tefillin on your left hand. If you're right hand, you put tefillin on your left hand. So you tie your left shoelace first because they represent the leather straps of the tefillin, whatever. But as a rule, just in general, as a rule in Judaism, the right hand comes before the left hand. So when there's something to do, right, you should use your right hand. Even to the point where it says that when you get an aliyah, somebody calls you up to the Torah in shul, you should start walking towards the Torah on your right foot and not your left foot, because your right foot is your stronger side. Interesting enough, Kabbalistically, the right side represents mercy. The left hand represents judgment. So it's very interesting. You would have thought, because the right hand is a stronger hand, you would have thought that would represent the concept of judgment.
No, not really.
Everybody here except for you would have thought that if the stronger hand would represent the dimension of judgment, but the stronger hand represents the dimension of mercy, which strength needs to be channeled into being merciful, which is why I did not just decapitate
with a
you.
strong hand.
Yeah.
He showed his attribute of mercy with a strong
Oh,
hand.
very good, right?
I think
HaKadosh Baruch Hu took us out of.
Baruch says that you should go to sleep on your left side. Am I right?
You got it, yeah, and then you should end up on the other side when you wake up.
But how can,
That's a lot of tossing and turning.
Not a lot, just the once.
how can you control
Still.
Huh?
that? How can you control
I tell you, the image is like this.
So you need to go back to bed until you wake up.
That's right. Just stay there. Tell that to Shlomi tomorrow morning. Right? Just tell him I'm sorry. I can't. I haven't turned over yet.
Very good.
Don't bother me right now. I'm in the middle of my Kabbalistic, whatever. I tell you, the image is like this. It's an interesting kasha. How can you do that? How can you sort of pre-program yourself to go to sleep on one side and wake up on the other side? So if you could really pre-program your body to do almost anything, which means, that most people, if they say to themselves that they want to get up at a certain hour, and they'll get up at that hour. They really will, right? So, for example, you've got to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning. Most people, we rely on alarms, but if you don't have an alarm to rely upon,
Put your clock.
I don't know. I can tell myself, right? I have to get up. I have to not say it, but I have to think it. That I have to get up tomorrow morning at 6 o'clock, and then I know that I'll get up tomorrow at 6 o'clock.
Well, you have to actually want to get up at that time.
Yeah, for sure. Obviously, I mean that goes without saying.
If you don't want to get up at that time, and you say I should, it's not gonna
Okay, all right. You know what? You need to have a little bit of kavanah over here for wanting to get up. So you want to say, I want to get up tomorrow morning. I want to get up tomorrow at 6 o'clock. So you get up at 6 o'clock. It just happened to be in the afternoon. That's all. That's okay. 6 is 6, right? There's a famous story they tell. Many years ago in the Mir, there was an American Bach who he learned very well, very serious boy, but he had a lot of trouble getting up in the morning. And the Rosh Hashiva, Rav Chaim Shmulevitz, was very upset with him. And when it came to Pesach, and the boy was going home for Pesach, and he came to say goodbye to the Rosh Hashiva, to Rav Chaim Shmulevitz, and Rav Chaim Shmulevitz was very cold towards him, which was very, very, very rare. He was a very warm, very caring, very loving person. And for this boy, he was very cold. He was upset with him because the boy claimed it was difficult to get up in the morning, and that's why he didn't come to davening in the morning, and Rav Chaim was very upset. Anyway, the next morning, this boy appears in Shacharit. He's there for davening. And Rav Chaim Shmulevitz, he was supposed to have gotten up early and got on a plane, right? And he'd overslept. But because he'd overslept the time that he was supposed to get up, he'd woken up earlier than usual, and he came to daven Shacharis. And when Rav Chaim Shmulevitz saw him there, he came over after davening. He gave him a kiss. He said, because all that time he thought that this fellow was just making up stories. It was difficult to get up in the morning. He was just being lazy. But he said he saw if the fellow couldn't get up to catch his plane, then I guess that means that he's got a real problem. It's difficult to get up. And most people are not like that. Most people can get themselves up if they want to, right? If they don't want to, then for sure it's not going to make any difference how many times you say, I need to get up at 6, and you can repeat it all night and stay awake all night waiting for 6 in order to get up, and the minute it gets to 5 to 6, clunk, you'll fall asleep. That's the way it works, right? I said, hello? I think everybody's dropped off over here. It's terrible. Anyway, Malbish Arumim. So how did you get the idea of tznius? Moshe asked about tznius, no?
Yes, what is that? How does that connect?
Oh, it was just Alex's thought maybe we could tie in the idea of Malbish Haramim, of wearing clothing, to the idea of tznius, which I think there is a connection. I really do.
With Mosh.
Was it? He's got no idea.
It was me, no,
It was you.
Not
Okay.
lady.
I'm sorry. I think it's easy to make the connection. I've never seen a source which says that that's why we say the bracha of Malbish Harumim. And then we make the bracha of Matir Asurim. What is Matir Asurim? Who releases the bound. Now, what is the concept of being bound? Everybody is bound to physicality in one form or another, which is we've all got things that are tying us down into the physical world.
So it has nothing to do with the Aikido?
No. Baruch Hashem. What?
So then it doesn't have anything to do with the Aikido?
With?
The Aikido? The
Aikido?
Yeah.
Isaac.
The Akeda.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Well, it was Abraham who untied Isaac.
Right, after hearing the emissary from God say, don't do that.
Yeah.
This is not a good idea, right? This is not a good idea. That's what he said. Please don't do this. This is not a good idea.
Yeah.
Matthias, what's the pshat? Pshat is like this. It's a very simple but very powerful idea. We all of us are, dependent on the physical world in a certain way. I think we're all addicted to certain things here in the physical world. So some people have addictions that are terribly unhealthy, right? So, for example, chemical substances, alcohol, things that are truly destructive. And people should work very hard to try to not to get sucked into things like that. But we're all addicted to the certain pleasures of the physical world, whether it's stale biscuits or
Stale biscuits are the best.
huh?
English tea.
Or English. Don't point at me. English tea. I have nothing to do with English tea. I would have been happy if they would have thrown the rest of it into the Boston Harbour. It really made no difference to me whatsoever. I don't drink this stuff. But we all of us have what we're.
Treason, isn't it?
Sorry.
It's treason, right? Technically.
What, throwing tea into the Boston Harbour? Well, it did spark
Yeah.
off a war, actually. Who would have thought? Who would have thought that a cup of tea would be quite such an emotive subject?
The taxes, I think, were the more emotive part.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It wasn't the throwing the tea into the.
taxes.
Okay.
The tea was
Because of
symbolic.
the taxes.
Oh, really? I don't think so.
The taxes were the excuse.
Yeah, I
tea
think
was
the
reason.
tax was symbolic, and the tea was really the. Americans could not take drinking that wishy-washy English tea anymore. They couldn't do it. Give them a cup of black coffee. That's it.
Yeah.
That's the answer. Anyway, Matir Asurim means like this. We're all addicted to the physical world. I mean, Baruch Hashem, without our addiction to the physical world, we wouldn't be able to live here, right? So whether it's things that are negative or whether it's things that are positive. Some people are addicted to the beauty of the physical world. Some people are addicted to chocolate. Some people are whatever it is, right? However, in order to be able to grow and to be able to connect to God in a certain fashion, we have to disconnect ourselves from the physical, right? And what we're learning over here is that when somebody has the mitzvot and somebody is living a life that allows him to clothe himself in the mitzvot, that will give him the tools to be able to break away from the things that are tying him down here into the physical world. It's interesting. I spoke once with a non-Jewish person. There was a period in my life where every single time that I travelled, I ended up sitting in the middle of some kind of a Christian group that were coming back from the Holy Land. And the truth is, there was lots to learn from them because first of all, they were so enthusiastic. They were like, and normally they were older people, well, one of them, I had a conversation once, it was just after Tisha B'Av, it was just after the 9th of Av, and he'd asked whether I'd fast, and I told him yes, and he was completely taken aback by this idea. I explained to him there were different fast days in the year, it wasn't the only fast day in the year, that there were different fasts as well, and he was completely taken aback by the idea that you have to, when it's like you fast, he says, what do you mean, so you don't eat anything, but you can drink, right? And to me, that was like it was funny because when you talk to Jews about fasting, it's clear that fasting means you can't eat and you can't drink. But to him, the idea of fasting just meant that you didn't eat, but it was okay to drink. And I told him, no, it's not okay to drink. You can't do anything. And he was completely taken aback by the idea.
When he said drink, was he including like milk or just was he only thinking water?
I don't know. I didn't ask him. That's already very Talmudic, right? So when you say drink, what are you saying? Is it okay to drink milk, or should I just stick with vodka? Like, what are you saying over here, right? In the Christian, like in the Christian rule book, right? What does it say with regards to how often can you drink and in how much quantities can you drink, and right?
They even fast.
Huh?
Do Christians even fast?
Well, yeah, you know what? I don't know actually.
They can during
Lent.
Lent.
Right, but what the emphasis by Lent, the idea is just dropping something, right? So, right, so do I. Normally my nose, but that's why they call me the noser. But
I'm trying to pay attention to this year, Rabbi.
Look. We all have our inadequacies, right? You've been here long enough to realise that that's a ridiculous thing to try to be doing. But in Lent, as a rule in Lent, what do? They drop something pleasurable. right? So they won't
Don't eat
smoke
meat.
during Lent, or they won't
Don't
eat
eat
meat
meat.
during Lent, or they won't,
Drink
whatever. No, that's not the extreme. That's very
So,
fanatical.
like, for example, they don't go to 10 o'clock class with Rabbi Lauffer.
No, they would only go to the 10 o'clock class because they're trying to suffer.
It's not suffering. I love this class. It's not. I got paid so much.
Thank you. But we could just supply you with a bucket of cold water, and it would do the same job.
So he was
Wake you up
surprised
in the
at
water.
fasting.
He was surprised at the concept that we could fast. And one of the questions that he asked, which again, you have to understand for me, these questions were almost bizarre, because when you've been brought up your entire life knowing that there are fast days and you can't eat and you can't drink, it's really not a big deal. It really isn't. I mean, some people fast better. And say, I've got kids that can fast without any problems whatsoever, and I've got kids that it's hard for them to fast. But it's not a question of whether to fast. You understand? It's not a And so to me, it was like it was an interesting question. I wanted to know, where do I have the strength to be able to not eat and not drink for such a long period of time? Which for me was
you get it. If you want it, you can do it.
Absolutely, which means like this. But it was like a little bit of a lesson for me, because that's really what Matir Asurim is teaching. No, that Matir Asurim is breaking the bonds from allowing us to break away from the physical and become more spiritual. When you know that that's what you need to do, when you know that that's what you have, so of course you're able to do it. But if it's something which you're not familiar with, something you're not aware of,
Scary, because it's unknown.
yeah, it's an interesting idea. It really is. Boys
Are
that
they American?
they were English,
Oh, even worse.
Because
for sure.
How
America,
rude.
fasting is like, people get really alarmed when you say that you're fasting. They're like, you have an eating disorder or something.
Yeah, I mean, Americans are the closest things to Jews that I know of. Like, if there's no food, something is wrong, right? Yeah, we can't even have a class without any cookies, right? It's impossible. So somebody once described the Jewish year as being, they try to kill us, we won, let's eat. Right, that's the Jewish year in a concentrated version.
It's not a joke. That's what actually happened.
I mean, it's funny, but it just happens to be true, that's all. Good, right? Which means that the Torah, the mitzvahs, your relationship with God allows you to control your physical desires. Here, example, keeping kosher. Right? Have you ever seen in a supermarket, go to a supermarket, right? And you see the kids outside of Israel, right? And you go to a supermarket in an area where there are Jews living, and you see a mother walking down the aisle with her kid, a Jewish mother with her kid, and the kid's like going nuts because the kid wants to have a particular snack, right? And all the mother has to say to the kid be like 3 years old, all the mother says is, it's not kosher. The kid stops. Because the kid knows that it can't eat that, it's not kosher. So it's a method of control, right? We learn how to control ourselves.
They go mad.
Sorry?
They haven't been brought up to know that it's not kosher, they go mad.
Yes, absolutely.
They think, why can't I have that?
Absolutely, right? There's a cute joke they tell about this lady who's walking up and down the aisles in the supermarket, and her kid's going nuts, he wants this particular treat. And his mother says to him, it's not kosher. The kid stops screaming and shouting, and they carry on pushing the thing. Anyway, Moshe, he's round the other aisle. He sees what's going on. He comes over, he says, Madam, he says, you know that they have a kosher section over here on the other side. Maybe you can get your kids something from there. So she said, why would I do that? I'm not Jewish. So he says, well, why did you tell your kid that he can't have that? It's not kosher. She says, I don't know. She says, I see the Jews do that and the kids keep quiet. She says, so I do it to my kid as well. It works. It's just a method of control, right? Here, so look, yesterday we spoke about, we briefly touched upon the laws of family purity, which is what? Inside the laws of family purity, there are 2 weeks within each month.
We talked about it 4 times already, so
399.
yeah.
The laws of family purity are such that 2 weeks inside of the month, under normal circumstances, husbands and wives cannot have physical contact with each other, right? Now, for somebody coming from the outside, that's a bizarre concept. It really is. Like, how do you do that?
I actually think that someone from the outside who's been in a long-term relationship would immediately see the benefits.
Oh,
of that.
yeah, for sure.
because
sure.
they would
Or would
sure,
go,
for sure,
how
for
do you
sure.
manage to
Because
do
then you've got
the
a
2 weeks where
reason.
you're allowed to touch them?
because
No,
then
no,
they
you don't have to.
they're like because otherwise there are no boundaries. And
Absolutely.
if there's no physical
Absolutely.
contact, somebody gets their feelings hurt.
Yeah, and if there is physical contact, then they get something else hurt instead. That's, you know.
Like that.
They did. It is
People
interesting
need
in
their
the
space, even in a
in the
relationship.
outside world. The divorce rate is hovering around 55%,
Yeah, in America.
which is that's that's enormous. It's what just over one in two.
Get married in the first place.
Yeah, just over 1 in 2 couples are getting divorced, right? And in the Jewish world, in the Orthodox Jewish world, it's much lower. Again, it's something which is unfortunately it is growing, but it's not what it is outside. One of the reasons for that is, without a doubt, that the concept of excitement within the marriage, inside of an Orthodox marriage, is something which is there constantly. Because when you can't have physical contact for 2 weeks and then the wife goes to the mikveh and she comes back and there's a renewal, that the Gemara itself says it's like getting married all over again, right? And it's mamish true. And first of all, not being able to touch each other for 2 weeks means that you have to learn how to communicate non-physically, which is a big thing, it really is. Physical communication is the easiest way to show somebody that you care for them. So you give them a hug, you give them a kiss, you show them that you love them, and that's it, you've done your bit, right? If you can't touch each other, then you've got to find different ways of showing that person how much you care for them and how much you think of them. And it's something, it's very, very beautiful. Again, I'm not telling you that it's easy, but the very fact that there are mitzvahs like that, the very fact that there are halachas like that, it gives you the power to be able to do it. It gives you the strength to be able to do it, yeah.